Welcome to Dave Examines Movies and TV. Today for Wife's Week, I examine The Chumscrubber, a strange satirical movie about a lot of things, but mostly about a bunch of kids that have a need to feel good. Hey, I'm Dave, and I created DaveExaminesMovies.com. I've been reviewing movies for over a decade, and I believe I've discovered the ultimate method for reviewing film. I've always used a 1 out of 100 star rating, but somehow that was still too biased and inaccurate for my taste. I wanted something so unquestionable that even if you hated something that I loved, you could appreciate my logic, and I found it. I call it Interpreting the Stars, which splits a movie into 10 categories, 5 solid categories that fit any film, and 5 specialty categories created specifically for the movie at hand. The first 5 categories are people, writing, behind the scenes, narrative arc, and overall entertainment. Each of these categories will have 5 subcategories of their own that ultimately define the star rating of the film. You'll no longer have to ask why a film's rated 76% versus 77. You'll now know what each and every star represents. This is Dave Examines Movies and TV. Alrighty, how's everybody doing today? It's Thursday. And that means we're still on Wife's Week, which means we're on to the next movie that my wife picked out for me to see. And it's actually one of the most requested movies that she's ever had for me to watch, and I kept saying no, doesn't look like something I'd be interested in, yada, 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 right? Well, now that it's Wife's Week and she gets to pick the things that I watch and review, well, here we are, Chumscrubber. Definitely a weird movie. Hard to put into words as to what it's about, but I guess I'll try. I'm going to start off with IMDb's description. A darkly satiric story about life crumbling in the midst of a seemingly idyllic suburbia, which tells you absolutely nothing about the movie. I understand that. So I'm going to go down to one of the user-submitted plot lines to give you a better idea. It says, the Chumscrubber starts out with Troy, a normal teenager who supplies quote-unquote feel-good pills to everybody in his high school. This way, he spreads happiness all around. But when his friend Dean pays him a visit, Dean discovers Troy has hanged himself in his bedroom during one of his mother's pool parties. After the death, 3 local teens, Billy, Lee, and Crystal, want what's left of Troy's stash of pills, and they know that Dean is the only one who knows where they are. But when Dean refuses to get the pills for them, the 3 teens kidnap Dean's little brother until they realize they kidnapped the wrong kid. It's actually way deeper than that, actually. It's kind of all over the place. But that kind of gives you a quick idea of what this movie is. Now, what does IMDb rate it? IMDb rates it 7.0 out of 10. Excuse me for a second. Oh, yeah, that's it. IMDb rates it 7 out of 10. Now, how does my wife and I rate it? To be completely fair and honest, we both rate it higher than that. I won't tell you the exact scores till the end, so stick around for that. But that actually does surprise me. I guess I'll get into that in a little bit. But anyways, thanks for listening. If this is the first time you're tuning in and listening, tomorrow I will be talking about another movie, and then I'll be talking about what I'm going to be reviewing, all the movies I'll be reviewing next week. So look out for that tomorrow. But today, it's just about you and me and the Chumscrubber. So what is the Chumscrubber? Well, I guess I'll get into what the title references later, but not now. That'll be later. So to review this, I gave my wife and myself 5 categories to review, including their subcategories. So the first category is people. Now, the 5 subcategories that make up this score are acting, characters, casting, importance, and chemistry. Okay? So let's talk about the first one, which is acting. My wife and I agree on this one that there is good acting. Mostly out of Jamie Bell, who's the main actor in this, which is fine. Jamie Bell is a pretty well-known, or actually, he's actually not all that well-known, but people know the name. Anyways, he's a good actor, and he pretty much pulls the story along. There's some weird acting here and there, but that doesn't make the acting bad. It's just weird. So as far as that goes, my wife and I agree that the acting subcategory gets a 2 out of 2 possible star rating. So up next, the next subcategory would be characters. So my wife and I disagree on this one. I thought, when thinking back to this movie years from now, I don't think I'm going to be remembering it for the characters in it, really. I'm going to be remembering it as a weird movie, really. That's as far as I'll probably get. I can appreciate weird movies, but I will still remember it as a weird movie and not for the characters. I don't really think they're all that diverse, while I guess some of them are, but for the most part, they all kind of blend together a little bit when you get past Jamie Bell. And so that kind of annoys me, so I said 1 out of 2 for that. My wife loves this movie to death and gave the characters 2 out of 2 because she's seen it so many times, and I think for her it's like everything's amazing. But, we'll get into that in a little bit. So the next one I want to talk about is casting. Did they cast the right individuals for this? I had a long fight with myself with this while watching it. My wife obviously automatically says 2 because she loves Jamie Bell and she loves the people in this movie and how they're so strange and whatever. And I was like, I don't know, could anybody else play these roles? And I mean, I came up with they probably could, but I don't think they'd make it better because this movie revolves around how weird people are, and that weirdness could be a diverse, whatever. So I said 2 out of 2 because I think they did pick the right cast members for this. So that's that. So next up, 2 out of 2 for that, for me and her. Next up is the importance of each character. How does everybody play a role into this movie? Well, to be completely honest, my wife and I agree on this one. Everybody does play a role and adds to the plot. Even though it's really strange how they do it, they do it. So the importance is basically their parents have important roles and the kids do as well. The parents have less important roles because they're probably the weirdest out of the bunch. But it does sort of add to the story. Some of them don't. I will say that. Some of them are just strange and don't really add to the story at all. Yes. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we both agreed that it was important, so we both said 2 out of 2 stars. As for the chemistry, now this is the weirdest one. I swear to God, this is the weirdest one. I thought they did have chemistry. I thought they had the chemistry not how you'd normally expect for movies with characters, but they did have chemistry in a different sense of the word. They worked well together. They worked like they meant to work together. However weird that was, it worked out for me, and I said 2 out of 2 stars for that. However, my wife was expecting the chemistry to be something different. So maybe romantic chemistry, maybe friendly chemistry, maybe something more traditional as far as chemistry is concerned. And she gave it a 0 out of 2 possible stars, actually, which is surprising. I gave the people score a 9 out of 10 possible stars, while she was a little bit lower with 8, actually. So that's an interesting twist of events here. Me liking a category of the movie that she loves more than I do. Interesting. So let's keep on going. We're going down to the writing category. What makes up the writing score is the dialogue, how balanced the movie is, how good of a story it is, if it's original, if it's interesting. And as far as that's concerned, our writing score is exactly the same but for different reasons. Okay, so for writing, let's talk about the dialogue. My wife said 1 out of 2 stars because she thought it was basically nothing that really stood out for her. But I gave the dialogue a 2 out of 2 possible stars because I thought the dialogue was actually strong because it was so weird. Because it was so weird, a few things stuck out for me while watching. Which is all I really need to give a dialogue a 2 out of 2. So I gave it 2 out of 2. My wife gave it 1 out of 2. Moving on. The story of the movie. My wife and I... Actually, I guess we should talk about how balanced it is. My wife and I agree with the balance at 1 out of 2 possible stars. It is a very, very strange movie. And so, when you're talking about balance, it's a little convoluted when you're talking about characters and specifics. They are normally around the same areas a lot, so I don't feel like it's over convoluted in setting. But characters, when it comes to the parents, can be absolutely, a little overbearing because you're not really focused on them when you're watching the movie. You're focused on the kids. So when they focus on those adults, it's a little bit of a letdown, I gotta tell you. I mean, it kind of gets a little convoluted. So, for the balance, I gave it 1 out of 2, and so did my wife. The story, my wife also agreed on with this. I gave it a 2 out of 2. She gave it a 2 out of 2. It's a good story. It has a lot of metaphors, actually, when you're watching it, which I guess we'll get into a little bit later, too. But the metaphors here... A lot of it had to do with the importance of their drug and needing it to feel good. It kind of reminded me when I was watching Trolls, when they needed to eat the trolls in order to feel good. Without realizing it's not the pills or the trolls that they really need in order to feel good. It just comes down to their need. It's a need they have. So... The story there and delivering that story was effective, even though it was like a dark comedy and it was weird like that. I think it was effective. I gave the story 2 out of 2, so did my wife. Next up is how original it is. Well, whenever you have weird movies like this, it's hard not to give them originality because there's nothing else out there like it. And that's pretty much true here. This is so strange and so surreal. It really is original. So it's not hard for me to give it a 2 out of 2 star rating here as well. And that's the same for my wife. Is it interesting? My wife obviously said 2 out of 2 because she loves this movie and she thinks it's interesting. Well, I don't really think it is interesting. Nothing really, really caught my attention and kept it going when I was watching it. I was watching it for her, and I mean, I'm rating all these subcategories based off of what their merit is and if they actually had it or not. But I wasn't all that interested while watching. So for me, I had to say 1 out of 2 stars, and the only reason why it was 1 was because certain things, certain actors in it, certain dark humor things in it did catch my attention, and for that, I'll at least give it 1 out of 2. My wife gave it 2 out of 2. So... Like I said, the writing score for us both was both 8 out of 10 possible stars. It was just for different reasons, which is kind of cool. The BTS, behind the scenes score. What makes that up? That we take into consideration the visuals, the directing, the editing, the advertisement, and the music. And once again, my score is higher than hers. Only by 1, but we'll see how we are here. Visuals. I thought it was a little aged. It was a little bit, but it was in its own right visually impressive. It had this overall feeling of surrealism when you're watching. Right from the beginning, right from the get-go, it just felt surreal when I was almost high while watching it. So that's one of those times when I gave a visuals a 2 out of 2 star rating. My wife also gave it 2 out of 2, so we're in agreement there. The next one up is the directing. We are also in agreement here with my wife and I. We rated the directing at 2 out of 2 possible stars, which is great. The directing is not bad for a movie that's so strange and so surreal. You still have to be a storyteller and tell a story. And for all its weird things that are going on, I believe the director did a phenomenal job at keeping it concrete and with a good foundation, and it keeps on going. So directing's 2 out of 2 stars. My wife and I agree on the editing as well, but it's not 2 out of 2. It's 1 out of 2, just because it was typical. Nothing really stood out there. Nothing seemed like it was stitched together as a challenge. Nothing really felt like that. So for us, we both agreed that editing was a 1 out of 2 star rating. Advertisement, for me, for me, I said 2 out of 2 stars. It basically was as advertised. So I have to say 2 out of 2 star for that. I'm not entirely sure why. I think I forgot why, but my wife disagrees and said it was 1 out of 2 stars. I'm not entirely sure why she said that. I mean, this is her movie. This is what she's seen multiple times. So for her, I would guess 2, but she definitely said 1. So 1 out of 2 for her, 2 out of 2 for me for advertisement. Music. We both agree with this. The music was decent. You know, it was more soundtrack than score. Because they selected a lot of, just strange music to go along with the strange movie. And I liked some of the songs, and she liked even more of the songs, so we both went for 2 out of 2 possible stars. So my BTS score is 9 out of 10 possible scores, while hers is 8. Once again, a little higher than hers, but don't worry, she still comes out on top. So we're moving right along to the narrative arc score. All right, her score is way higher than mine on this one. So let's talk about this. This is an important one for me to talk about, because if you feel like something's missing in a movie, it might be this, because nobody ever talks about the narrative arc score anymore. So let's talk about it. What makes up the narrative arc? No throwing blueberries, son. All right, we're closing that. I know you're going to be upset. Alright, so what makes up the narrative arc? The introduction, the inciting incident, the obstacles involved, the climax, and the following action. So let's see. How is the introduction? The introduction was, I didn't really sense an introduction. It really went into the inciting incident right away. So for me, the introduction was 0. My wife said it wasn't much of an introduction, but it still had some, so she said 1 out of 2 stars. But really, it mostly just started off with an inciting incident, which was that guy that was hanging himself, the drug dealer that hung himself. That was the inciting incident, and the crossing of the threshold was when those 3 guys kidnapped his brother, or who they thought was his brother. That was what was going on. So for the inciting incident, I said 2 out of 2 possible stars. I thought that was pretty clear for me. My wife agreed and said 2 out of 2 stars. As far as the obstacles, I mean, this basically the movie's about the main guy trying to find the drugs for the guys who kidnapped the stranger kid. And along the way, he runs into obstacles, most of them which have to do with like a ghost showing up in his vision of the Troy, the guy who hung himself, which was weird, but hey, who knows. I will say that the obstacles are clear, 2 out of 2. My wife agrees with me there. Climax, I said 1 out of 2 stars because I felt like the climax of the film was subpar, that it was anticlimactic, that it pretty much goes without me noticing, because the theme of it, how it feels, matches the rest of the movie, and it really shouldn't. It should feel like a climax, and it really doesn't. I gave it 1 out of 2 stars there. My wife gave it 2 out of 2 stars there because she thought it was exciting. She thought it did match what a climax should feel like. So more power to her. She gave it 2 out of 2. I gave it 1 out of 2. Falling action, I also gave it 1 out of 2 stars because I thought it mostly just ended after the climax. There wasn't a huge return to the new norm, but my wife disagrees, says the falling action was pretty evident and that it does its job. So she said her falling action was 2 out of 2, while I said mine was 1 out of 1. That ultimately says that my narrative arc score as a total comes down to 6 out of 10 possible stars, while hers is 9 out of. So she's coming right back up on top. So she really liked the narrative arc there, while I wasn't the biggest fan. Once again, the next category she wins out on top on. This comes down to the entertainment score. Now, what makes makes up the entertainment score is the rewatchability, how fun it is, the impulse to buy it, the impulse to talk about, and does it suck the audience in. Then again, it's hard for me to actually give these scores high scores. There's more of these that are rated low for me than high. But then, and my wife saw it. This is like one of her favorite movies, so you kind of guess where her score is going to be on this. Rewatchability, I said 0 out of 2 stars. I don't really care to see it again. I thought it was strange. It was fine for what it was, but mostly just strange. My wife said 2 out of 2 stars, mostly because she has rewatched it multiple times, and she already knew beforehand that this was going to be a full 2 out of 2 score rating. Next up, do I consider a fun movie? I think some things here and there I kind of chuckled at, and it was so abstract and surreal and weird that I kind of couldn't help myself. I consider those moments fun, so I said 1 out of 2 stars there. My wife said the whole thing's a freaking, amazing ride, so she said 2 out of 2 stars as well. One of her favorites, what can I say? Next up is the impulse to buy it. Did I have an impulse to buy it? Well, I didn't really have an impulse to rewatch it, so I'll have to say once again 0 out of 2 stars for the impulse to buy it. My wife has bought it in the past, 2 out of 2 stars. The impulse to talk about it, I mean, it's so weird, like I've said before, so if being that weird, you kind of want to talk about it, but at the same time, it's not going to ruin your life if you don't. So I said 1 out of 2 stars there. My wife needs to talk about this with people because it's one of her favorites. 2 out of 2 stars. Does it suck the audience in? Like I said, with those weird things that are like out of this world, those things suck you in. Yeah, 1 out of 2 stars there. She says, oh yeah, the entire movie sucks her in. 2 out of 2 stars there. Woo! So our entertainment scores are way different. Way different. This is the most... I don't know. So, my entertainment score is 3 out of 10 possible stars. Hers is a full Monty, 10 out of 10 possible stars. It is the most entertaining movie ever. So, that's like the craziest thing right there. So let's actually move into those 5 questions that I asked for us both to answer. The first thing I'm going to see when I watch trailers to this movie is it kind of feels like a dark humor movie, and for me, dark humor and dark comedy, it's kind of touch and go. I don't always like them. They don't always meet up with my expectations. For this, I don't know. I didn't really sense it. I sensed more weirdness than dark humor, so I said 5 out of 10 stars. My wife said that it was definitely worth the dark humor, and it's the dark humor that she can relate to, so she said 10 out of 10 stars. So she had a perfect score there. How about this? It looks like an indie movie, right? It looks like an independent movie. It doesn't look like a blockbuster or anything like that. How does it fare well with my expectation there? It's exactly what I thought it would be, actually. It's 10 out of 10. I gave it 10 out of 10 possible stars for being an independent movie, and so did my wife. How about this? I knew it would be weird going in. So, was it weird? Like I said about 20 times throughout this review, it's definitely weird. 10 out of 10 possible stars there. The same goes with my wife. How about the relevance to the title, the Chumscrubber? Well, I want to tell you right now what the Chumscrubber is in this movie. The Chumscrubber is a video game character that walks around who cannot die, and he has his head cut off. And throughout the movie, you're supposed to start to believe that Troy, the guy who hung himself, was the Chumscrubber. But it really makes no sense. If they cut out the entire segment every time they mention the Chumscrubber video game or whatever, the movie would have probably been better. To me, there is no relevance to the title. The Chumscrubber means nothing. It's just what their character they created, and throughout the movie, it's not about the Chumscrubber, really. It's about, the main character, who is not the Chumscrubber. So, for me, it was clear as day, 0 out of 10 possible stars. My wife kind of agreed with me that it is not the best title for the movie because it's not about the Chumscrubber, per se. So she said 5 out of 10 because there's still like a metaphor inside of a metaphor of what the Chumscrubber stands for and what you're seeing in this movie. So she gave that 5 out of 10 possible stars, which is, I can't understand that, yeah, but I still stand by my 0. Halfway decent, like I said, it deserves credit where credit is due, and I said 10 out of 10 stars as well as she did. So my total specialty score is 40 out of 50 possible stars, while hers is 45 out of 50 possible stars. So that brings us to our total scores, everyone. My total score was 75 out of 100 possible stars, 75%, which is actually a pretty decent average score for me when it comes to movies. My wife gave it 88 out of possible 100 stars, which is a very, very good score, which just comes to show you that she thinks it's good both technically and personally. She likes it as far as entertaining and everything. This is definitely one of her favorites, and I understand why now. But I mean, for me, it was just really average. A lot of the stuff behind the scenes was pretty good. It wasn't as entertaining as it was for me. But, that's how you learn more about each other, and that's how you figure out your likes and dislikes. So, 75 and 88, so far so good. I mean, everything that I've rated so far has actually been close to her rating. We just have different outlooks on the movie itself, which is interesting to me. Anyways, so that was the review for today. Tomorrow is going to be reviewing The Bumblebee Flies Anyway, if we actually get to see it tonight. If we don't see it tonight, I will be reviewing Teaching Mrs. Tingle instead, which is another movie we saw as the backup for that. So, look out for one of those movies tomorrow. If I don't actually review Teaching Mrs. Tingle tomorrow as a backup, I do have it planned to be reviewed in a week or two. So look out for that regardless. So that was that review, and I guess that's all I have for today. Make sure you subscribe and like my podcast and give me a shout out. You can email at me at dave@daveexaminesmovies.com if you have any questions, concerns, suggestions on movies to watch, anything like that. I'm always willing to listen to suggestions. I'm on Twitter, IAMDWG, and lastly, I always like to tell people that I am on a website called Tracked.tv. You can look it up. It's a pretty cool website where you get to track everything that you watch, TV shows, movies, and everything. If you're like me, I watch a ton of TV shows, so much that I can't keep track of when the new episode airs. So this shows me how late I am on movies that or TV shows that I haven't seen in years, which is cool, right down to the episode. And it also tells me how much of my life I've spent watching movies and TV shows. You can follow me and see my progress live. Like if you're my friend on Track.tv, if you're on my site at the exact right amount of time, you can see what I'm watching right then and there. You can see what I've watched, my history, the things that I've rated before I rate them on my podcast. Lots of cool little things on there. So Track TV, cool website. I definitely recommend it. And add me as a friend on there. Again, my username is IAMDWG. So check it out. I hope to see you there soon. Other than that, check me out tomorrow. I'm going to be bringing you one of two reviews. I'm not sure which one it's going to be. It's either going to be The Bumblebee Flies Anyway or Teaching Mrs. Tingle. So, enjoy the rest of your Thursday, and I will see you tomorrow. Peace out.
Dave examines movies we just watch for fun. Davey is the expert. He is the number one critic that I go to when I need a movie pick. Thanks for joining up with us. We think you're pretty